All right, good afternoon, everybody. This is Pete Pro Kilo with Fire Engineering. Just wanted to welcome you to today's webcast. Fire Research Corporation is proud to present today's webcast, which is Maximize Your Scene Lighting When It Matters. Founded in 1968, Fire Research Corporation has been manufacturing innovative products designed for the fire and safety industry for over 4 decades. So you can find a little bit more about them online at www.fireresearch.com. So please go out and visit them after this session. So a couple of housekeeping notes for you before we get started today. The presentation is both live and interactive here. You can ask questions at any time by clicking in the Ask a Question widget in the presentation window. If you will answer all the questions at the end, the Q&A portion of the webcast, but if you run into any problems and you need technical support, please also go through the Q&A area and our team will reach out to you and get you squared away. We recommend you close down all other applications for better performance. For your convenience, today's webcast will be available on demand within 24 hours of the live event. A reminder email message will be sent to everybody who registered with a direct link to the archive, but you'll also be able to find it at www.fireengineering.com/webcasts, and it'll be up there for over a year so you can rewatch, share it with your crews, etc. So we're offering a certificate of attendance for today's webcast. If you're watching today, it will reflect your time in session. But if you're watching this on demand, please just go to fireapparatusmagazine.com. I'm not sure about that /certificates and enter your information. And we will mail out our on-demand certificates on Fridays. So if you have any other questions about that, just hit us up in the Q&A section and we'll get you taken care of. Now a little bit about our speaker today. Jason Witmier is the Director of OEM and Technology Product Sales at Safe Fleet Fire, EMS, and Industrial Group. Jason has a Bachelor of Science degree in Electrical Engineering from the Pennsylvania State University. He's a former Assistant Fire Chief for the City of Pottsville, Pennsylvania, with 32 years of experience in emergency services. He's a current state fire instructor in Pennsylvania and has more than 26 years of experience in the fire apparatus industry, including engineering, design, and sale of emergency vehicles and related components. So Jason, please take it away.
Thanks, Pete, and thanks everyone for joining in today. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk about maximizing your scene lighting when it matters, and that pretty much means on the fire ground. So we're going to walk you through some of our products, but more importantly, we're going to give you an education. Try and take out some of the rumors and things like that and really explain what scene lighting is. So a little bit about Safe Fleet. You may not know the name Safe Fleet. Safe Fleet is fairly new to the fire industry, but the brands that we have underneath our umbrella as Safe Fleet are iconic brands. What you see on the screen here are all of the different markets that Safe Fleet enters into. So bus, rail, RV, waste and recycling, first responder market, what we're here to touch on today, industrial, truck and trailer, things like that. We have a very wide breadth of product. Just going to walk you through the 4 iconic brands that Safe Fleet is responsible for and that falls under our umbrella. The first is Elkhart Brass. You see a collection of the different products up there that Elkhart Brass handles. So you're talking about valve controllers, apparatus valves, monitors, deck guns, things like that. The next one would be ROM Corporation. ROM Corporation specializes in roll-up doors, drop-down trays, and hose bed covers. We have Foam Pro, which, built in right to its name, specializes in foam, both industrial and on direct injection onboard systems for fire apparatus. And then the last one will be Fire Research Corporation, which is what we're here to talk about primarily today. So we're going to dive into lighting, but Fire Research also has pressure governors, tank level gauges, flow meters, things like that. So what we're really here to talk about today is scene lighting. And it used to be pretty simple in scene lighting. You would look at how many watts a scene light was, and if I had a 500-watt light, the next guy wanted a 1,000-watt light. And then when you had a 1,000-watt light, someone wanted 1,500-watt light. We just kept getting brighter. But it's not about how bright you are. It's about how effective that lighting is. Anyone can just put a light on the side of a rig, light it up really bright, and cast light all over the place. Sometimes when you do that, you're obstructing the view of oncoming traffic. You're maybe even hindering your firefighters as you're blinding them. So what we're really going to get into today is how to focus that light and put it on the scene where we want it. So the first question right out the gate, who offers the brightest light in the industry? Well, there's a lot of options and there's a lot of terms involved. And you're seeing them all pop up on the screen. And as we go through this presentation and we talk about the science behind it and everything that goes into it, we get into lumens and lux and wattage, it can be a little bit confusing. And I'm going to give you the answer to this question up front. It really doesn't matter who offers the brightest, because it's not about the brightest. It's about the most effective. It's about putting the light where you need it. So the first thing that we're going to do to understand what light you want is talk about the terminology, understand some of the science behind it. So the first thing is, for decades in the fire service, we talked about wattage. And everyone could relate, because at home you had a 60-watt light bulb. And then you went out to your fire apparatus and you had a 500-watt light. So you knew that that was a lot brighter than a 60-watt light bulb, but you had something to relate to. Today, in today's world of lighting, we talk about lumens. Once we got into the LED world, we kind of got away from wattage, and instead we talk about lumens. So watts are a measure of power consumption. There is still wattage involved in LED lighting. It's just not telling you how bright the light is. Lumens, on the other hand, are a measurement of the total output of a light. And we're going to go in deep on what lumens are exactly. When we do talk about lumens, what can get very confusing is effective versus raw. You will see some manufacturers advertise this is the effective lumens and this is the raw lumens. I'm going to explain to you what the difference is here on this slide. So raw lumens are a theoretical output of light. They are a calculation. The example would be if I have 8 LEDs and I know that each individual LED is rated at 100 lumens, it's simple math. 100 lumens per LED, I have 8 LEDs, that's 800 raw lumens. That's how a lot of the lighting in the industry is advertised. The effective lumens come into play where no matter what we do, no matter who builds the light, there's going to be losses. There's going to be losses as a light heats up. There's going to be losses in the electronics. There's going to be losses through the lens. Those losses can be very difficult to calculate at times. When you take all those losses into effect, you get your effective output of the light. So the example I'm showing you on the screen here, the raw lumens were 800. When we take into effect thermal, optical, and assembly loss, and in this particular example, you're seeing this manufacturer estimated about 10% loss in the lens, about 10% loss in the electronics, and 10 to 20% loss in thermal. Because as the LED heats up, we have electronics that have to adjust it or we'll burn that LED out. When I take that all into effect, I'm losing about 240 lumens. So while we advertise that light as an 800 lumen light, it's really only about 560 lumens on the fire ground. Now the problem, this is different for every OEM, for every different lighting manufacturer. So you really want to ask the question and understand. I like to refer to things a lot as an analogy. So think of this like your paycheck. We all collect a paycheck. Our raw lumens, that's our gross pay before taxes come into effect. Our effective lumens, that's after Uncle Sam takes his cut out, what we actually take home and put into our checking account. When we do talk about lumens, you will hear the terms lumens and lux both thrown out. The example on the screen here helps you relate to it. So lumens is the volume of light that's emitted from the lamp. Lux is the specific intensity at a point. So it's not simple to just say, well, how many lumens are on the ground? They're not. How many lumens is what's coming out of the light itself? If I want to look at a specific point on the ground, like you see with this light bulb example on the right side of the screen, at a specific point, that's 500 lux. If I spread that beam out optically, now it's 100 lux because it's not concentrated on one point. We'll explain that as we get into the lenses. So when we take a look at it, I mentioned the fact that in the past, you could look and say, well, I've got a 60-watt light at home. Now I have a 500-watt light on my rig. And now I'm going to upgrade to a 1,000-watt light. So it's twice as bright. When it comes to lumens, there's not a lot that you can look at and say, well, what is a lumen? How do I relate it to something? A good way to think about it, the full moon on a clear night produces 1 lumen per square meter. So about 1 lux on the ground. On a bright sunny day with a clear sky, the sun is about 10,000 lumens or 10,000 lux at one specific spot on the ground. So you're going to see us talk about a lot of lighting that gets up into those type of numbers where it's producing what the sun does. Color comes into play. At the end of halogen, when halogen was starting to go away, we started to play with color a little bit, but we weren't allowed to do a lot with it. When it comes to LED lighting, we can control the color very much through the different manufacturers. The way to talk about color is Kelvin. So Kelvin is the measurement that is telling you the color of the temperature and color of a light. Visible light can be anywhere between 1800 and 12,000 Kelvin. You will see all of the FRC LED lights are designed to be in that daylight mode. And that video that was on at the intro really gave you an example of seeing that halogen light and then what it changed to when we went to the LED light. We will, at the end of this, we're going to look at a few still shots of that video to explain it better. The next thing that comes into play with LED, I talked about, is heat. So the biggest enemy to an LED is heat. Most LEDs on the market come with a lifetime warranty. That is because if we treat the LED properly and we don't overheat it, it will last a lifetime. If we just make it as bright as possible and leave it bright the whole time, eventually you will burn that LED up because of the heat. The way to fight that heat and make your light more efficient is with your heat sink. What you're seeing on the screen right now are 2 pictures of the back of the heat sink that is specifically engineered for the FRC light. So the heat sink takes that heat that's being generated by the LED and then going through the electric board and dissipates it rapidly. You'll see here on the screen specifically, if you look at that lower right picture, the heat sinks don't line up. They're all over the place. They're not just placed there randomly. They're specifically done that way because if the heat's coming off of one sink, I don't want it to just jump up to the next sink and heat that one up. I want to get that heat shed off of the light as best I can. There's another example of the FRC heatsink. The light on the left would be our spectra line, and we just have a cutaway in the white metal cover on the back to show you what it looks like. The light on the right is our newest line, and we're going to walk through the lines of lighting from FRC at the end here. Another thing that comes into play is the circuit board. So again, the enemy of an LED is heat. I have to shed that heat as fast as possible. One of the ways that we do that at FRC is to use aluminum circuit boards. That helps us get a very efficient transfer of heat off of the LED into the circuit board and then into the heat sink so that it doesn't heat up and burn up the LED. That's something you want to compare. You don't always see the inside of these lights when you're looking at the different lights on the market. So that's a question you want to ask your salesperson. What type of circuit boards do you use? Is it a traditional plastic printed circuit board, or is it an aluminum circuit board that's going to help dissipate? The next thing is how to focus the light. So if I just take an LED, think of a light bulb that you see on the side of the screen, and I just light it up. Light's going out all over. It's coming out at different angles. It's lighting up an area, but it's not concentrating into one spot. That would be the example where if I had 10,000 lumens, when I go to one point on the ground, I might only have 1 lux because I didn't specifically concentrate that light into an area. When you do want to concentrate the light, there's 2 primary ways to do it. And this is how we're going to focus the light. So one would be reflection. So if you ever look at a scene light and you see what looks like a bunch of mirrors on the inside, that manufacturer is using reflection. They're bouncing the light beams that come off of the LED, bouncing it around some mirrors so that they can concentrate it into one area. It's effective, it works. However, there's a lot of loss involved in that. So that's when you get up into that 20 and 30% loss because I'm reflecting it so much. The other way is refraction. That is specifically aiming the light by using a lens or a prism. Again, very effective. The added benefit, a lot less loss of intensity because I'm not having all kinds of loss through the bouncing off of a mirror. This is really what FRC specializes in, and where the business began is in this lens technology. So when I do refraction, I have the ability to control the focal point of the light. Think about high school science class when they talked about your eye. So you have all of the light coming into the lens of your eye, and then your eyeball is basically focusing that light onto the retina at the back. We're doing this in exactly the opposite direction when it comes to scene lighting. We have an LED that's casting light out in all directions. It then strikes a lens that will refract the light and get it to the exact point that we want it. It's a good slide coming up in a few that will show you exactly what that means and how it's different. And that is truly where the science lies in the FRC light, is the lens. Anyone can take a board, slap some LEDs on it. It's truly the engineering to be effective is in that lens. So this lens you see on the screen right now, you notice across the top and bottom, you see a bunch of yellow dots. That's the LEDs on the circuit board. They look a little bit distorted. That's because we have a lens in there that's refracting light and turning it into a flood section. So across the top and bottom, you have your floodlights. That's getting a lot of light to the ground and dispersing it in a wide pattern. In the middle, you have a bunch of lenses that look like eyeballs. That's your spot LEDs. This is what's taking that light that we saw on the previous slide and putting a focal point out in the distance. So now I'm getting my spot LEDs built into the same light head. And then the really unique thing that FRC has always done is we like to take a small section and get light directly to the ground, even backwards. And we'll show you that on a slide. So this center section is a focused area that specifically takes light and casts it straight down the side of the apparatus. What we get by using this lens technology is a uniform flood and spot combination pattern that's highlighting the area below my rig and out into my scene. So I'm going to give you an example slide here. Try and take all of the science we just talked to and combine it into one and say, well, show me the difference. If I put 2 lights next to each other, it's so hard to just compare numbers. Instead, tell me exactly how it works and how to compare 2 lights to each other. What we have here is a setup in a parking lot. We have a tripod. And in this first slide, you're seeing our competitor's light. Same light family. So we're not using a 10,000 lumen for one person and a 20,000 lumen from the other manufacturer. These are the lights that would be equal as far as the lumen output. I'm going to note a few things on this picture. This first yellow arrow you see is showing about the widest point that this light is making. This next arrow is showing how as I come back towards the ground where the light's set up, that focal point is pulling in. So the bottom arrow is about the widest point on the ground right below the light. The upper double head arrow is the widest point overall, anywhere on the scene. And then out in the distance, I put a little spot here for you in this circle. And I want you to take a close look right now in that circle and see what you can see out there. I mean, it looks like there's a reflection off of probably the side of a car. I can't pretty much tell what's beyond that car. I have no idea if the parking lot just continues or if there's something out there in the distance. The very last line I'm going to put on the screen is a solid yellow line, and that's showing how far back the light casts. Now I'm going to switch the light. I'm going to turn the competitor's light off, and I'm going to replace it in the exact same position with a Spectra by FRC. Couple things jump out immediately. So for starters, the solid yellow line on the bottom of the screen. I'm going to pull up a highlighter here so I can help show everyone what I'm talking about. So right here, look how far back this light is cast on the ground. This solid yellow line is where the competition's light was. Now on the ground, you're seeing we're coming back even further. The spread. So this double head arrow on the bottom was showing the competition spread at the ground, right next to the rig. We're so far out that the picture doesn't even capture it all. This upper double arrow was showing the competition's maximum spread. Again, we're way beyond all of that. And now out in the distance, well, there's that car. I saw the side of that car kind of reflecting before. Now I can see there's a fence and there's trees out there. So that's your spot pattern. This is your flood pattern down here. This is your spot pattern. Bear with me 1 second as I turn the laser pointer off, and I will flip back and forth real quick just so you can see what we were talking about. There's the competition's light. There's the FRC light. So we've gone through the science. We've talked about heat dissipation, circuit boards, heat sinks, and how the light is produced, and the terminology. Now we're going to dive into all the different lines that FRC offers. There are a lot of options out there. They all have a specific purpose. Why have so many options? Well, as a company, we'd love to eliminate some of them, but the reason we have all these options are you have different needs, and no one can tell you what's right for your rig. You as the firefighter, you as the person writing the spec for your rig, you know your atmosphere, you know your environment you're operating in, and you need to look and say, why do I want this light in the side of the rig? Do I just want to light up the whole area? Am I looking to specifically light up right next to the rig? Am I looking to light up out in the distance? So all of the FRC products, we are very proud to say we are made in America. FRC's plant is located right in pretty much in the middle of Long Island in Wisconsin, New York. Everything that we build is engineered, assembled, and tested in the USA since 1968. Almost all of our LED lighting has a lifetime warranty, and we like to call it our no-hole guarantee. So with a lot of things in life, when you have a warranty on something, a lot of times when something breaks and it's under warranty, you send it back, they evaluate it, they say, oh no, you broke this, or they say, hey, yeah, our product failed, and then they send you a new one. We can't have that in an emergency scene on a fire truck. If your light goes out, we're not going to have you pull the light out, leave a hole in the side of your body, go without a light for several weeks while you have us evaluate it. The way our warranty works, if you have a light that fails, you call us and we immediately send you a new light. We keep stock of just about every make and model of light that we produce. We get a light out to you right away, you swap them out, you send that old light back to us. If it failed because of something we did, we move on. We tell you, yep, we had a failure, stuff happens. Nobody's perfect. There will be failures of product. If something happened where we think your generator may have generated too much power, then we're going to talk to you about that because we want to make sure it doesn't burn out the rest of the lights on your rig. So very simple warranty policy. First light I'm going to talk about is the Vantage Point. The Vantage Point is a remote controlled spotlight, produces 6,700 lumens of light. This would be our competitive product to the Go Light. A lot of people in the industry know the Go Light. This is an alternative to the Go Light. Now, there's a couple key differences between the Vantage Point and the Go Light. I'm going to highlight them on the screen. The first is automatic rotational stow. So on the screen, you see this FRC logo right here. We used to always say it automatically parks forward facing. Well, that depends on how you install it. If I install it on the roof of my cab and I have this FRC logo pointing forward, then yes, it's going to stow forward facing. Someone says, well, I don't want to face forward. I like it to face off of the officer side all the time. And that's where I want it to start. You would just simply remove these 4 screws, turn the light, and mount it so that FRC logo was facing the side of the rig. The point is, whenever you power this light down, it's automatically going to rotate to this position where the LED or where the logo is. That way, if someone had it pointing behind the rig and now it's 2 a.m. and you pull up on scene and you power it up and you're looking all around, you're like, I can't find my light. And now you're spinning it trying to find it. You're going to know where this starts every time. The next thing would be the die cast magnesium housing. In our competitor's product, a lot of it has plastic. This is all die cast magnesium housing, so it's much more durable. The last one is continuous rotation. So any electrical guys out there that know a lot about electronics and how they work, this has a collector ring in it. So instead of having a cord in there for the electronics, where you would spin around 360 degrees and then hit a stop point and have to return and go back the other direction, this can continuously spin, no issues. By the way, if you do have any questions about any of these lights as we're going on, just reminder, type them into the chat and then we'll address them. If I have to back up to a slide later, it's not a big deal. Next we want to talk about is our crest light. So this is our low profile LED scene light, available in several different widths, and it can come with or without marker lights. So you see the options on the screen. We now have 5 different widths of this light. This is a 12-volt DC power only light. The widest is a 68-inch wide. We did 2 beam patterns on this, what we call low beam and high beam. They can be individually controlled. Most people have them turned on all the time. So flood beam is your high beam, which is trying to get light out into the distance, about 150 feet from the rig. And then the low beam is a more concentrated pattern that's going to start 10 feet out and highlight the ground. One of the big concentrations we had with our lenses on the crest light is we want to hold it. We're doing 1 lane. So we're only lighting up the area directly in front of your rig. We didn't want to light up 2 lanes wide because that's going to cast light into the oncoming traffic. And the last thing we want to do is blind that driver that's coming in the opposite lane and have him veer over into you. So always thinking safety is built into our name, safely. Some of the lights, like the 49, 62, and 68, you can have the marker light option. When you get down to a thin 28 or 14-inch wide, marker lights wouldn't make any sense. They're available in a white or black housing. And these can be mounted anywhere on the rig. They don't have to be on the brow. They can be on the side. That's why you see them long ones are available optional without marker light if you wanted to use it on the side. So Bright is a line that we've had for many years. It's probably used mostly on aerial devices for lighting up, going up the rungs. It's also popular on the back of a rig. If you think of the old Unity deck lights, this basically takes the place of that. So the So Bright itself is 12-volt DC power only, 7,000 lumens. It's a very bright light. You have a couple patterns to pick from, and that doesn't mean that on scene you're flipping a switch and going, okay, do I want spot, flood, or trapezoid? When you order it, you have to choose which pattern it's going to be. On the screen here, we're showing you what the patterns look like. So here's your spot pattern. So if I specifically was putting 2 of these on the back of a rig, I might want one that is looking to light up out in the distance so that I can move it on that yoke mount and light something up. And then I might want the other one in a flood pattern to really light up the ground behind the rig. Trapezoid pattern is more that general. I want the best of both worlds. I want a good spread, but I want some distance. Again, available in a white or black housing. Spectra is the line that has been around for Oh, it's at least a decade now, and it is our flagship line of lighting on fire apparatus. It's a high intensity LED light. We sell it in both DC and AC power. It can be fixed, portable, or recess mounted. This shows you the family of Spectra products and what all we have to offer. And I'm going to walk through each one to explain what the differences are. So you've got the Spectra Max, which just increases the light, the Spectra Max S, which you'll see a very different lens on the Max S here versus the Max or the Spectra. The Spectra HR, which is a fairly new light into our family, and that stands for high rise. And then the Spectra MS is a compact version. Spectra HR is the newest addition to the family. And when you think about lighting, for decades, all we thought about with lighting was let's get light out and let's get light down to the ground. What about in a city atmosphere where I have a tall building, a high rise? Doesn't have to be a 50-story skyscraper. It can be something as simple as a 5-6-story high rise that many of us have in our towns. How do I light up? If I'm lucky, I have a light tower and I can control that and change the adjustment on the lens and light up. But if I just want something fixed that goes up, we really didn't have that in the industry. So what the Spectra high rise light does is specifically get that light up into the air. It's available pole, brow, or tripod mounted. It's 28,000 lumens of light, 12 volt DC or 120 AC or 240. You see all the options on the screen here. So there's 72 LEDs in there, and 34 are specifically this upper section with the fisheye looking lenses, and 38 for this lower section. What that translates to on the fire scene is an industry exclusive light that provides lighting at the ground as well as up onto the building. So you're seeing on this slide an example. My rig is parked here. So my rig is parked back from the building. We assume that we're about 8 feet up in the air. So I'm in the brow position, for example, in this slide. And I'm able to light up all the way up here, 90 feet high on the side of the building. So these are essentially windows that you're looking at. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stories up, I've got nice illumination. And then we're showing that I can go several windows wide as I light up the face of that building. The other two charts are just explaining it in a little more depth, getting into all of the details on angles and where that light is being projected. The Spectra 900 series is the light that you would typically see on the side of your cab. This is the light that would turn on automatically on a lot of rigs when you open the cab door, lighting up the area that your occupants are going to get off the rig, giving them safety in the area. We have two models of this. We had the Model 900, which came out first and was the standard on a lot of rigs for a long time. And then we started to look at it, and our lens on the 900 gets light out in the distance. Well, that light on the side of the cab, it's much more important to get light down on the ground. So a few years after the 900 came out, we introduced the 950. Very different lens pattern to the 950. I'm going to show you what it looks like on the ground. The 900, 7,000 lumens, the 950 is 5,000 lumens. It's a perfect example of what we're talking about. All too often in our fire service, we'll look at something and say, well, hey, John next door has a 5,000 lumen, so we're getting the 7,000 lumen. Doesn't necessarily mean it's better. Sure, it's 2,000 lumens brighter, but where is the light going? Where is it effective and where do I need it? That's the example that this light provides. The 900 at 7,000 lumens casts way out into the distance. That is a little hard to read there in feet, but if I look on this slide here, that's about 135 feet out that I'm casting light. The 950 is specifically designed to get down to the ground. So now I'm only out 60 feet because this light isn't designed to light up the building that I'm across the street that I'm going to. It's designed to light up the street right next to my rig. Another great example of this would be on the back of your rig. So if you're installing a light on the back of the rig, specifically for backing operations, I'm not necessarily worried about what's 160 feet down the street. I'm worried about what's right behind me that I might run over 60 feet back and getting a much wider pattern. This is an example that shows you the actual pattern on the ground of the 950. So again, I have the footprint here that shows you 60 feet out, and you're getting about 70 overall feet of width. On the ground here, you can see the pattern. I'm lighting up a bright area all around. The other thing is, I'm going to call out a little highlight here. This is not an optical illusion. This light that you see back here in an arc pattern on the ground, that's not coming from something else on scene. That's not coming from a flash or anything like that. That is coming off this light head, because that lens at the bottom has a curvature to it that's specifically designed to get some light down and back. So if it's on a tripod, it's going to light up the ground. If it's mounted to the side of my rig, what it's going to do is it's going to cast light down the side of my rig, helping to light up that ground area. The newest generation of lighting that has been introduced for FRC is the Radiant. If you were lucky enough to be at FDIC last year, we had a display of this. We'll have it again this year at the upcoming FDIC, and all of our regionals out in the field have Radiant lights now available to show you as an end user. So anything I've talked about here as we've gone through the presentation, if you want more information, we have a team of regionals across the country that have this lighting. Best way to evaluate lighting, ask for a lighting demo at night. We can set up the rig that you have now, set up the new stuff next to it, do a comparison. It's much easier to do that than to dive into numbers. In the Radiant family, we will have 3 different lights. The Radiant Eco, which is primarily made to go on a fixed base or a tripod. The Radiant Lux, which is your surface mount on the side of a rig. And then the Radiant Max, which will go on a pole. And we'll talk about each one of these individually. So the Radiant Eco is a spot flood combination. It's not available surface mount. It's pole or tripod. It's 15,000 lumens. Now, I talked about how in LED lighting, we talk about lumens and lux and not wattage. We don't talk about wattage to describe the light, but we still need to keep wattage in mind, because wattage comes into play when we're looking at the power draw on your rig. At 15,000 lumens, we are drawing 100 watts of power consumption. That makes this the most efficient 15,000 lumen light on the market. It's available 12 or 24 volt DC, 120 or 240 AC. One of the new features on the power supplies of the Radiant are, you saw in the slides before, I would say 12, 24, 120, 240. We had to order it that way. With this light, you order it either DC or AC. If you order DC and it's 12 volts, and then for some reason your power system would change to 24 volts, you're fine. The power supply can take either. Same thing with the AC. If I've wired at 120 and then something changes with my generator and I have too much load on one circuit and maybe I want to make it 240, that same power supply can handle that. It comes standard with an asymmetrical lens design. A symmetrical lens is optional. What's the difference between asymmetrical and symmetrical? We talked about the fact that all the science is in the lens itself, and that's what this lens does. So the asymmetrical pattern is specifically getting light out and down, which is what we've talked about on most of our slides. So if I'm mounting a light on the side of a rig, if I'm mounting a light on a tripod, I want to get it out and down. Now, if I have a little portable light on a base that I'm putting on the ground, I might not want to go out and down because it's already low to the ground. That's where a symmetrical pattern would come into play. Symmetrical patterns are also what's used on a lot of your light towers, because we specifically want to cast light out in a big pattern, wide pattern like that, like a cone. The Radiant Lux is the surface mount. This will take place of the spectra at some point. 22,000 lumens. The brightest spectra was 20,000. So we've stepped up to 22,000 lumens. And again, we've held that power consumption down to 150 watts. One of the neat features with the Radiant Lux, if you have CAN bus control, so multiplex system on your rig, you have the ability to dim this light. So one of the things that we've always seen in the industry is we've gone big and bright, 22,000 lumens. Look at me, I'm lighting everything up. Well, now maybe I get to a point where it's too bright. The nice thing with this is I could dim that light down and make it appropriate for what I'm operating right on that scene at that time. We also have the ability to flash this on amber. That doesn't mean that this becomes a warning light, because it's not, but it can at least flash an amber pattern, which it could be used almost like in an arrow stick type of situation where you're trying to, if you've got a couple of them out in a row and you're trying to direct someone. The other thing is it's just giving someone a warning that there's a vehicle up ahead. And then the last one is the Radiant Max. So the Radiant Max, if you think back, any of you that have been in the fire industry a long time, there used to be the old federal telescoping light on the side of the rig that had 3 big round halogen bulbs in it. And 1 or 2 of them were spot and the other 1 or 2 were flood. And you had 2 switches, 1 to turn flood on, 1 to turn spot on. That's what this light gives you. So you've got 32,000 lumens of light. And you can see the different lenses here. So these are your spot, your little fish eyes, and then these are your flood patterns. And with this light, you can have a switch pack that allows you to turn on only flood, turn on only, only flood, meaning this, only spot, or turn them both on and light the whole thing up. Gives you that flexibility on scene. This shows the different patterns, what you're going to get out of the light. So if I turn on only the flood, I'm getting the ground area right in front of me. And because these numbers are hard to read, I've blown them up here on the slide for you. So if I have flood only on, I'm 250 feet out, and I'm getting about 200 feet overall spread. If I turn flood off and turn spot on, now I've got a very tight pattern that's going 450 feet out. In most situations, on most fire scenes, you're just turning them both on, and that's what this last slide shows you. What you want to take note of here is when I turn flood on and spot off, and I turn flood off and spot on, I'm not changing the light. I'm just turning one of them off. So it's not like, oh, well, if I don't run the flood, the spot will be brighter. That's not the way it works. When you turn them both on, you get the best of both worlds. That covers all of the lighting products. The last thing I'm going to talk about are upgrades. So we have a website set up called upgradeyourlights.com. It is our LED retrofit program. This program launched, it's 4 or 5 years ago now. And the purpose was to take all those old halogen lights out in the industry and start getting them off of rigs and getting LED on there. It's more efficient, it's brighter, it's whiter. Gives you a bit more safety on the fire ground. You saw the video in the opening, and this video was shot. And again, we took care in making sure that the lights you see are in the exact same spot on the rig. The rig was marked in a parking lot, so it's parked in the exact same spot. And we took all the photos from the same angles. So we're not trying to do a sales pitch here and make it seem brighter in one mode than the other. We're trying to do an exact comparison. So what I'll ask you here on this rig with the halogen is note the intensity, color, and temperature around this rig. How many parking blocks can you see in the lot? So I clearly see this row right in front that I have the rig parked against. I barely see the start of row 4 back here. I'm telling you there's a row 2 out there. If I didn't highlight that, you might not even see it. But I can basically see 3 rows of parking blocks with this halogen setup on this rig. We then took that rig, removed all the halogen lights, replaced with LED lights. Because they were FRC halogen, we have the matching FRC LED that goes into the same area on the rig. You may have to drill a different hole, but old holes would be covered. So we're not talking body filler, we're not talking paint. Very easy to just install this new light snip the 3 wires, and hook new wires up. Now, when you look, how many rows of parking blocks do you see? So before we saw the row that the rig was parked against, and we kind of thought there was a row 2 out there, and we saw the very center of row 4. Now we see a 5th row, we see row 1, we see the full width of the parking lot. No power change, same generator, same exact rig, just upgraded the lights. Put a side by side to give you comparison between the two. This is very simple to do. You don't have to be an EVT technician to do this. You don't have to have an electrical engineering degree. You really just need to get the serial numbers off the old light, give them to your salesman. He'll translate it over to the new light, and it's a very simple install. Our newest light I talked about was that Radiant Eco. We have an upgrade program right now on the street. You may have seen advertisements on this. So a set of LED Radiant Eco heads, 15,000 lumens each. They will fit any 1 1/4 inch pole configuration. And we have an adapter bracket if you have a 3/4 inch pole that we can adapt the light to that. So you don't have to be replacing an FRC light. You can be replacing any light in the industry as long as the pole is either 1 1/4 or 3/4 inch NPT. Very simple. You spin the light off of the old pole, snip the wires, connect 3 new wires up, put the new light on. Delivered to you at the end user, and this includes delivery, $1,549, gets you 2 of them. If you want to add an on-off switch to them, it increases the price by $50. They're available 12-volt DC or in AC configurations. The So Bright is the last upgrade that I'll talk about. I talked to you about the So Bright lighting. The So Bright upgrade was designed specifically to go in place of Collins Dynamic FX or the Unity AGL. These are all available at upgradeyourlights.com. So that pretty much wraps up the presentation. We talked about the science of lighting. We talked about the different technology that goes into it. We talked about almost all of the FRC lighting products. There's a few that we didn't cover because we wanted to keep this concise. You can see the QR code on the screen there that would take you to the Fire Research website if you wanted to explore anything further. Everything's on our website, drawings of lights, specifications, all the different details. At this point, I'll turn it back over to Pete if there's any questions that have come in.
Jason, thus far, we do not have any questions, although folks, if you're still hanging in there and you have anything for Jason, please go ahead and put it in the Q&A section. I did want to mention again that you can get a certificate for attending here. If you are watching on demand, you need to go to fireengineering.com/certificates and enter your information there, and we will mail those out to you on a Friday at that point. So, Jason, I don't see anything coming in at this point. Let's see if there's anything here now. We got one from Sarah West. You mentioned that the radiant light that mounts to the rig will be replacing the Spectra light. Is it the same for the Radiant Max? Will it be replacing the Spectra Max that mounts to a tripod or pole?
So I guess the answer to that is yes and no. The only difference between Spectra and Spectra Max are the lumens. So on the Spectra Max, we put a bigger power supply and we're pushing out more light. The difference between the Radiant and the Radiant Lux and the Radiant Max would be the mounting. So the Radiant Lux is a surface mount. The Radiant Max is specifically a tripod mount. But so yes, it can replace a Spectra Max, but it doesn't have to. You could do the Radiant Eco to replace a Spectra Max if you wanted to, but it would be a little less light.
All right, Jason, thank you for that. And Sarah, thank you for the question. Folks, last call for questions. If you have anything in here, we got one from Dan saying, can you post or repeat the cert info? I'm guessing that if that's for the certificate, um, or I don't know, is that related to you, Jason, or?
Does I'm assuming when you say the cert info, you're talking about the how to get your cert for
Yeah,
attending.
I'm
I can give
assuming
you the
that's
address there.
okay. Okay, yes. So Dan, just go to fireengineering.com/certificates, and we'll get that to you. But if you're registered and you're watching this now, as Dan is, we should be able to get it to you uh, at this point. So thank you, Dan. Anybody else? It's the last call at this point, folks. Getting towards the hour mark here. So if not, just a reminder that this presentation, first of all, Jason, thank you for all that information, and thanks to uh, Fire Research Corporation as well for providing all this today. And
Thank you for the opportunity.
yeah, certainly. And again, if you can visit them online at www.fireresearch.com. I know that there is on a previous slide they did have that QR code that you could visit as well. So you'll be able to rewatch this if you missed anything and you want to check it out again. This will be available on demand shortly. We will email you a direct link to the archive. You can also find it on fireengineering.com/webcast. It's going to be up there for a year. So if you want to come rewatch, share it with folks, please do so. So, Jason, any final thoughts?
No, just thank everyone for their time and attention. You see my contact info up there. If you ever need more information, please don't hesitate to reach out.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, and we will catch you next time.
Thanks.